There obviously was he must have put a lot of time and effort into making sure that everything would go smoothly for us. I enjoyed the dinner very much. It was great food. I love bread pudding. It's one of my favorite desserts.
Dice que una de las cosas es que disfrutó mucho del pudín que hicieron y de toda la comida y toda la preparación que todo el tiempo que tomó y por eso es que está muy contento por toda la forma que está pasando aquí.
And I want you all to know that it is a celebration. This is a celebration dinner.
Esta es una celebración, esta es una cena de celebración.
When we started with this case, all that I could do when I first started was just to file the lawsuit in court. We weren't sure what the LA Unified School District was going to do in response.
Okay, al comienzo lo único que hicimos fue básicamente tratar de archivar la demanda, no supimos qué iba a pasar. Probablemente lo que estaba pasando es que estábamos solo anticipando cuál sería el próximo paso que la Escuela Unificada de Los Ángeles tomaría.
A lot of it was predictable, but there have been a few things that I actually did not predict. I was ready to deal with them, and I have dealt with them. I dealt with that successfully.
Hay muchas cosas que fueron predecibles, pero hay también muchas cosas que no se podían predecir. Pero las cosas que no se podían predecir las he tratado de una forma muy buena.
One thing was initially I decided to file a lawsuit in state court, downtown Los Angeles, in complex litigation division of the court, which gets special treatment. The judges at that location are known to be meticulous, thorough. They understand the law in these areas. It was the perfect place to be, and our case was accepted by one of the judges, fine judge, and was designated as a serious, complex case, and that's where we started off.
Dice, lo que pasó al comienzo fue que el caso comenzó a nivel estatal, se llevó a lo que se llama a los casos complejos, en el cual él piensa que los jueces son mucho más meticulosos en lo que se refiere a las leyes, en lo que se refiere a los casos, y es ahí donde todo comenzó.
And so that was fine. The one thing that happened right away that I actually did not anticipate, but it did happen, and so we went in that direction, was the district decided they didn't want to be in state court.
Una de las cosas que pasó que yo no anticipé fue que casi inmediatamente después que se archivó a nivel estatal, el distrito vino y trató de moverlo a otro lado.
They wanted to be in federal court.
Lo mandaron a la Corte Federal.
They have the right, because we did allege that there were free speech violations under the United States Constitution, First Amendment. There were federal issues that were involved in the case, and when there are federal issues, the case can go to federal court. So they played that card. They exercised that option.
Lo que hizo la Escuela Unificada básicamente es que como habían asuntos que tenían que ver con las leyes federales, entonces ellos lo que hicieron fue transferir el caso del estatal al federal porque habían asuntos que tenían que ver con la primera enmienda de los Estados Unidos.
So the probability was that they would get, in federal court, they would get a conservative judge, probably appointed by a Republican president, probably somebody who was not going to sympathize much with consumer rights or public education, etc. You know, a lot of Republicans are for privatizing education, for voucher systems, etc. So they played the probabilities that way.
Una de las cosas que hicieron básicamente es de que ellos jugaron el juego de las probabilidades, en el cual ellos pensaron que básicamente que este caso caería en las manos de, por decir, un juez que sea republicano, o como aquellos jueces que tienen una idea más que tiene que ver no mucho en relación a lo que el consumidor o los derechos del consumidor. Entonces ellos jugaron esa carta trayéndole hacia la ley, hacia la Corte Federal.
So that didn't actually go the way that they anticipated. We were assigned to a judge that has a long history of understanding issues such as presented in this case, actually worked in this area for a significant portion of her career. I knew when we were initially assigned, and I could read the background of this judge, that probably was not what the district was anticipating. It was a long shot, and it worked out heavily in our favor. And I want you all to know that once we got to that point, there was a huge sigh of relief on my part.
Una de las cosas que él vio que cuando a lo que pasó lo contrario, no en favor de la Escuela Unificada de Los Ángeles hasta cierto punto, porque el caso le llegó a un juez que básicamente es una persona que tiene un conocimiento amplio en este tipo de casos, y entonces él se siente que cuando él llegó a ese punto y vio quién era el juez y estudió más o menos todo lo que tiene que ver con la hoja de vida de esta persona, entonces vio que sí, probablemente había una probabilidad, muy buenas probabilidades de que sí podríamos adelantar el caso.
So then they file their papers, and they're going to launch their arguments against us. And in one of our first meetings that I had with the parents, I explained that probably the school district was going to come back and say, you know, that contract that we made with the parents in 2006, the parent involvement agreement, we have no intention of honoring anything in that in terms of an enforceable contract. And that may seem as a surprise to parents, but that was my prediction. And that's exactly what they did.
Básicamente que cuando llenaron ellos comenzaron a archivar todos los documentos, lo que hicieron es, sinceramente un argumento que hicieron, hay que decir que el contrato que existe entre los padres en la póliza de padres de 2006, que esa póliza ellos no la iban a respetar. Entonces él dice, eso fue exactamente lo que pasó, eso fue exactamente lo que ellos presentaron ante el juez.
And then I said that several months ago in that meeting that the district would come back and say, you know that organization, the District Advisory Committee of Parents, the central organization, that we've spent millions of dollars over the years to facilitate elections and organize it. You know that organization? That organization, to us, has no enforceable legal rights.
La otra parte que hicieron fue como parte del argumento de que, hablando del comité de consejeros del distrito, en el cual ellos pusieron el argumento de que no hay una ley o no hay un contrato que se pueda enforzar en este aspecto, y eso es lo que también la Escuela Edificada de Los Ángeles presentó.
So I had to deal with those, and then instead the district came back with the second argument. Actually, I sort of knew what was going to happen in terms of them disavowing the contract and trying to ignore the DAC. That was pretty predictable. But the one area I didn't anticipate was, and it did come up, and I dealt with that, and we dealt with it successfully. And that was another huge sigh of relief on my part. And that was that they came back and they said, the parents have no rights except under the No Child Left Behind law. And the United States Supreme Court has held that you can't go into court on the No Child Left Behind law. You have to go to a state agency such as the Department of Education, or you have to go to Washington, D.C., and you can't go to court. You have to do it that way. And of course, a lot of people file UCPs, and they might send a letter to Washington, D.C., and well, you know, what does that ever accomplish? Certainly can't accomplish what a federal judge can accomplish for us in a court order and a ruling. So they made that argument. So we dealt with all that, and the district said, there are much stricter deadlines in federal court in terms of turning over documents, etc. It's at a much higher level of strict rules and procedures to follow than is generally followed in our state court. So they had a deadline of about the end of March to turn over a lot of documents, and they asked me to extend that time. And they said, we want to have a ruling on our arguments, you know, that the contract is no good and the DAC doesn't exist, and the No Child Left Behind law is, you know, that would stop this case completely because you can't go to court. And I said, okay, well, I will agree to that. As a courtesy, I'm going to give you that courtesy. We'll wait for that hearing, and then as soon as that hearing comes down, and you lose, then you're going to have to turn over the documents. So they agreed to that.
Okay, now, le voy a dar un resumen de lo que está pasando. Básicamente, lo que pasa en el proceso, o sea, como la Escuela Edificada de Los Ángeles responde a todos estos argumentos, él está diciendo que básicamente hubieron argumentos predecibles, que él los trabajó, y hubo argumentos que tienen que ver con la ley de ningún niño rezagado, que básicamente está hablando de que tiene que mandarse el caso al nivel estatal, y que también hicieron un argumento que se le aplicó antes en relación de que el DAC no tiene un contrato que sea enforzable, o que básicamente de que en sí, básicamente la Escuela Unificada de Los Ángeles no tiene, el DAC no tiene ninguna base, pero él dice que básicamente les dio esa oportunidad, llevaron papeles y todo, y entonces para aliviar esos asuntos lo que se hizo como por marzo se se presentó el argumento ante las Cortes Federales, entonces él les dijo de que básicamente si ellos fallaban en ciertas cosas, entonces iban a proceder de otra forma.
So it turned out that, so we waited that time, and I said, that's fine, we can wait for that. And it's a lot of documents, and I probably couldn't get through all of that at that time anyway. I didn't anticipate that the judge was actually going to ask for more time. Our lawsuit is about 300 pages, and you had dozens and dozens of pages that were the lawyers for the district filed and that I filed. So the judge said, I'm going to put this off for 30 days. So we did that. That's why our hearing went out till May. And on May 21st, the district lost.
Okay.
Their motion was denied on every single one.
La jueza pidió más tiempo para poder examinar los documentos. Entonces en mayo 21 para mayo 21. Entonces en mayo 21 lo que pasó es que la moción la votó la juez y perdieron los argumentos.
So many of the parents were there. They saw this, what I'm about to tell you, and that is the judge said, okay, now I want you, Mr. Brown, and you, Ms. Osborne, the lead attorney for the district is Amy Osborne. Said you'll have to meet in person. I want you to meet in person and go over this issue about the documents, because she had seen that agreement that we had in March where I agreed to let this go. We didn't have any dates, specific dates. I want to see some dates on this. You have to finish that document. So you have to meet face to face. So I didn't hear from Amy Osborne for a couple of days, at least another day or so. And I knew at that time that my son was graduating that Saturday. Friday was going to be very busy. Monday's a legal holiday. We really had to get this meeting done, right away. So I called Amy Osborne, and I said, okay, so we have to meet, so, we'll meet. She says, well, I don't really think we have to meet. And I said, the judge has ordered us to meet. And she said, well, yes, but you guys have to file an amended pleading on the First Amendment issues, which is true, we did have to file. The judge asked for more detail about, for example, the norms of conduct that Maria Casillas handed out for all the parents to make them sign. She wanted more detail, actually, about Aloy's situation where Maria Casillas assaulted her when the motion was being presented that the DAC had. That issue, I won't go into a lot of detail. She wanted detail on all of this. So I said, but those are, Amy, with all due respect, I understand we're going to do those amendments, but those are really not, 90% of the case is about the DAC, the contract. It's true that we have these federal issues, but the reality is, Amy, I can just drop these issues and we're going to go back to state court. You won't even be in federal court anymore.
Lo que pasó básicamente en el mayo 21, cuando estuvieron ante la corte, él estuvo presente, hubo muchos padres presentes. Lo que se hizo fue de que la juez nos mandó a ellos a que hablaran frente a frente. Entonces él dice que pasaron ciertos días, la señora esta nos llamó, tuve que atender a las necesidades de mis hijos, y después dice que yo la llamé a ella. Entonces dice que ella dijo, bueno, ¿para qué? Tú tienes que llenar unos papeles de enmienda para discutir el asunto de la primera enmienda que nos mandó la jueza. ¿Okay? Entonces fue cuando le dice, no, pero eso es lo que la juez nos mandó, a que habláramos frente a frente, básicamente.
So I said, okay, Amy, but we have to meet, and so she said, well, we're going to ask the judge for clarification. And I said, okay, well, you go ahead and ask the judge for clarification, and I wish you the best of luck, but you need to set a date now for the meeting, because I'm very busy this weekend, and Monday's a holiday, and we got to do this. She said, okay, Thursday at 2 o'clock. I said, okay, fine. Call me, I said, if you hear something about the clarification. So later in the afternoon, she calls me and says, okay, we'll go ahead and meet. And I said, so you didn't get that clarification, did you? There was really no response. She didn't get the clarification. There's no such thing. The judge has made her ruling. You can't call a federal judge and say, I'd like you to clarify your order. There's no such thing as that.
Lo que le está diciendo básicamente que tratando de trabajar con la señora esta, le mandó a decir entonces que tenían que poner una fecha en cual tenían que ellos hablar juntos. Pero entonces la otra señora le dice, bueno, no, hay que dejar de buscar clarificación con la jueza. Entonces le dice, bueno, ando pues, te deseo suerte. Entonces viene y después hablaron, le dicen, tal día nos encontramos el jueves, algo así, para practicar. Cuando viene le dice, ok, vamos a practicar. Entonces le pregunta, ¿qué pasó con el juez? ¿Qué pasó con la clarificación? Dice que se quedó callado, porque está diciendo que una vez que un juez establece reglas y lo que tiene que hacer, eso es lo que es.
So we had our meeting, and I said, okay, so we agreed that the district will now be producing a lot of these documents. I had a list of 12 categories of documents. She said, no, we want to put that off till mid-July. And I said, well, you know, I gave you the other extension, and I'll work with you on that. But I need some documents now. I can't keep just extending this forever. The answer was no. And we went back and forth on this. We met for 3.5 hours. And it was, I can tell you honestly, it was constant stonewall. And these are the parents that they're dealing with, the parents' case. And this is the reaction that I was getting. So I said, okay, you need to get, we still had Friday, and I still was going to be around a little bit on the Friday, so I said, you need to get back to me. She took notes. I said, put something together and send it to me, and you know, I'll keep an open mind about this, but you got to start producing something. So it ended up where I didn't hear from her, so I submitted a proposal, and she refused that. So I've submitted that to the court. She submitted her own thing. And I've explained to the court in a declaration under penalty of perjury that there are certain rules to follow. The district is not following those rules, and we have to get going with this because, I've explained, this is a very large school district. It's the second largest in the country. There are 8 local districts. It's really 8 districts in one. I need to take the testimony of at least 20 witnesses in each of, and that's actually maybe too few, 20 in each of the 8 local districts. That's 160 witnesses. Then there are about 20 witnesses, administrators, etc. at the central office whose testimony I'll probably take. And I also explained to the court that I'm going to take testimony of every board member, plus past board members.
Déjenme dar un resumen, ya que lo que está diciendo básicamente que el codificador de Los Ángeles está creando más o menos barreras, ¿ok? Él le manda a pedir documentos y le dice, bueno, ¿qué tal si lo hacemos por julio? Y dice, no, pues si hay que hacer lo que tenemos que trabajar, ya tiene una extensión anteriormente. Entonces después básicamente mantuvieron, dice, una conversación de aproximadamente 3 horas, y en las 3 horas que estuvieron sentados con el otro lado, con el codificador de Los Ángeles, todo fue más que un bloqueo. Entonces eso, él está diciendo que entonces hecho una declaración ante la Corte Federal, ellos llenaron otra. Entonces las dos se mandaron a la jueza, en el cual le mandó a explicar detalladamente todo el proceso que él tiene que ocupar, en el cual tiene que mandar a hacer testimonio de un sinnúmero de superintendentes. Hasta aún tienen que no solamente de los miembros de la mesa educativa que están hoy, sino también a todos los miembros de la mesa educativa que tuvieron los años anteriores.
So I've explained to the court that, you know, that's, when you add it all up, it's about 200 witnesses. There are tens of thousands of pages of documents that go back for many years. The court wants to know more about the history of the DAC. We're talking about going back to the beginning of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, throughout the 70s and 80s. You know, this case falls clearly under the category of complex cases. It was designated as a complex case by the state court judge that originally had this case, and it mostly does concern state court law issues. The district tried to make it totally into a federal case. They lost that point. When I sat down with Amy Osborne, I said, you lost on all of this. She said, we didn't lose. And I said, Amy, it's right there. The judge denied your motion. Okay?
Entonces me imagino que entendieron, ¿no? No, básicamente lo que le está diciendo que lo que está pasando básicamente que en el proceso que está pasando le está indicando al juez a través de documentos de que esto es algo complejo que se requiere un sinnúmero de documentos y un sinnúmero de testimonios de mucha gente. ¿Okay? Entonces esto toma más tiempo. Entonces cuando se sentó con la señora la señora Osborne le dijo, bueno, y tú, dice, ustedes perdieron. Entonces dice que la escuela, ellos dijeron, no perdimos. Entonces le dice, mire, todos los asuntos están acá. Es como dice, si él quita lo federal, puede mandar todo a lo que se refiere a las cortes estatales.
So that's I just want to give you the detail on all of that. That's where we are at this point in the case, where I checked just before I came down here today to see if the judge had made any ruling on those papers that had recently been filed. I did my best to comply with the judge's ruling. I think she has all that explained. We go back to court on June 11th. Right now we're in the part of the case that has to do with the timing of all of this production of documents, as to when we're going to start doing the depositions, etc., the taking of testimony from witnesses. And that's where we are in the case, and we just keep going on this direction. Probably won't have some real final answers on some of these other issues, like because the judge wanted to see some history on the DAC, so we've got to do that. We may not have final answers on some of those issues until late summer probably. But the issue as far as NCLB being, barring the case, and we have to be in administrative agencies in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento, all of that's been rejected. The parents have a right to go to court. They have a right under state law to sue under the contract. We want a major victory.
Comenzamos un proceso en el cual se va a proveer un calendario básicamente que va a venir de la juez. Y una de las cosas que está diciendo que todo lo que tiene que ver con lo que se llama ningún niño rezagado, tiene que ver, o sea, aunque lo hayan removido, es el derecho de los padres a demandar en las cortes estatales, porque básicamente hay historia a través de lo que es el Comité Consejero del Distrito, no solamente de los años 60, 70, 80, y todo eso de cuando se inició. Entonces se está recopilando toda esa información para ponerla como parte del caso y que tal vez comience más o menos las cosas ya por la parte más alta del verano que viene.
So, but at this point I want you all to know, though, something I think that's very important for all of us to know and be aware of in a case like this, is that I think we have to, as I reflected on this before I came to speak to all of you, we have to know where we stand in history, because there have been other lawsuits that deeply concern the education of the children, and we stand at a particular time in history now that is different from the past. And I want to give you spend a minute or a couple of minutes if I can, talking about, there was once another case that's probably one of the most significant or important cases, certainly in the history of LA Unified, and maybe in the country. That was a case that was started not too many years after the very famous case of Brown versus Board of Education, which was the major case in the United States Supreme Court calling for an end. It was a very gradual process and really has never finished, but they did call at least for an end to segregated schools. So in the early 1960s, there was a young girl attending school in LA Unified named Mary Ellen Crawford. And at that time, this is the early 60s, so it's actually almost to the day here, about 50 years ago. Okay? Now, at that time, Southgate High School was 99% white. And Jordan High School, where Mary Ellen attended, was 99% African American. So, it was worse, though, than just having segregated schools, which at the time was actually the law. After the Civil War, there was a very famous case called Plessy versus Ferguson in the United States Supreme Court that said that, well, as long as services are provided equally, they can be separate. So separate but equal was the law of the country until you get several cases that came down in the later part of the 20th century, including Brown versus Board of Education. So after that case, the parents of Mary Ellen Crawford decided that they really had had enough from LA Unified in terms of how they were treating their daughter, because it was worse than just going to a segregated school. She had to cross very dangerous railroad tracks, okay, to get to her school. She had to cross, some of you are familiar with it, I think it's Alameda Avenue, which is a major truck route between the San Pedro and Long Beach ports and Los Angeles and going beyond LA. So it's a very busy truck route and railroad tracks, plus it was other obstacles to cross. It really was ridiculous. So her parents, of course, are the ones that brought the lawsuit. And the judge in that case, a judge named Gittleson, actually voted against the district in many respects. The district took the case to basically the case was about they wanted to end segregation in the LA city schools. So they took the case, went up to the Court of Appeal, went up to the California Supreme Court, they tried to go to the United States Supreme Court, and went back and forth in the courts for a very long time. And as time goes by in this case, the population changes. The population changes. The geography changes somewhat in terms of transportation. It said the population gets really huge, so the traffic problems are gigantic. The freeway system is a mess, and the case took 20 years. And in 1982, when the case finally did end, that was the year actually that I graduated law school. And if they had, actually, I think in retrospect, if the city of LA had tried to handle the traffic problem in the way that now they're having to deal with it, and at the same time trying to handle the segregated schools problem, there probably wouldn't have been such a disaster in terms of the busing, forced busing situation that occurred at that time. But those buses had to fight ordinary traffic. I don't think we even had diamond lanes. I don't remember any diamond lanes back then. So, you know, the whole thing was just all messed up. Now, there's a well-known educator, Harvard professor named George Santayana, who's he coined an expression. He lived in he was born in the mid 1800s. He actually died close to 100 years old in the mid 20th century. And every teacher knows this expression, and many of you will be familiar with it. And that is that those that do not remember history are condemned to repeat it. And the Crawford case is the seminal leading lawsuit case concerning the education, the rights to have proper education, equal education, not separated education, etc., etc. And if we forget that case, we will be doomed to repeat many of the mistakes that were made in that case. Where we stand today is very different. In 1962, there was no internet. There was no telecommunications really much at all. There were no laptop computers and iPods and iPads and the cell phones that we have today, and the way that people are able to communicate and inform each other. There was no fundraising dinner like this. There was no DAC. It didn't exist in 1962. There was no organization of parents like this. It was just Mr. and Mrs. Crawford and their daughter, and whatever the ACLU and a few organizations could help. But that was before Martin Luther King lost his life. It was before the real strides that started to be made in the late 1960s and the early 1970s and on in civil rights. So we don't have to repeat those mistakes because we do have the organizations today. This is a very different era. We're going to have a website up fairly soon after this dinner. Some of these funds will be used for that. We will try to get donations through that website. Once people can communicate with each other like this, district-wide, these things will change because we will have the funds, the resources, the information, etc., that wasn't available to Mr. and Mrs. Crawford, that wasn't available for Mary Ellen. By the time that case that was 20 years. She had already, I'm sure, gone on and maybe had children of her own. So that's where we stand today in history, and I'm honored and I'm looking forward to getting through some of these preliminary proceedings and then starting with the long trek that is going to be in this case, taking all of the board member depositions, their testimony, the administrators, and we'll see how all of that balances out against the parents. I think that many of them will have to admit a lot of things about what has been done in the education of our children and in dealing with the parents. And so I'm looking forward to great success in this case. It'll be very different from the other case because we do have the resources, etc., to get it done. At least we'll be working in that direction. And then years from now, hopefully people will say, you know, remember when LA Unified was run by a large number of administrators who really either didn't have children in the district or attending the schools, really had no stake in it, and politicians. Remember when it was like that, as opposed to what it is, I'm talking about what they might say in the future, when it is run by parents, when it is controlled by people who really have a stake in the education of the children that are attending the schools at that time. Because it's at that point that the whole calculus, the whole thing changes, and then you have children coming out. You don't have a 50% dropout rate. You have, you know, whether or not, there's not going to be a debate about whether or not children should have the A to G curriculum so that they can be competitive to get into a good college if that's what they want, etc. This will be standard, and so that's where I stand in history on this. That's where all of you stand on this. And we'll have more meetings, we'll have more fundraisers, and I'm just looking forward and hoping we can continue to have the success that we've started to have in this case, and we can get to that day in the future when all of this is just a bad memory and the public school system is what it should be, and the children have a real solid opportunity at competing not only in this country for good jobs and good wages and good incomes, but worldwide, because that's where we're going with this. Thank you very much.
It's going to be on June 11, the next hearing date. So all of you are welcome to come. It's a wonderful place to be there, okay? No se olviden de la corte el junio 11 a las 9 de la mañana. Ya saben cómo hay que llevar su identificación porque ahí nos registran. Ya saben cómo son las cosas.
Robert E. Brown, our lawyer. Nuestro abogado Roberto E. Brown. Thank you. Well, the fight just begun. It just has begun. We have to continue. And the party has just begun too. You had dinner, you had the mariachi. Now you have to get ready for dancing, okay? We have a group, where did they come from? Sigifredo? I think they just got out of jail, I think. No, get ready to dance. Grupo Bocho. Thank you. Remember, we have to fight. Oh, the raffle. 3 tickets, $5. The raffle is going to be done now, okay? Anybody else wants a ticket? Somebody else? 3 tickets, $5. Raise your hand. Nobody? Okay. Rubí tiene el boleto ganador. ¿Quién lo va a sacar, la niña?
Ok, quiero que digan ellos a qué número, al primero, al segundo o al tercero.
You want first, second, or third number to be pulled to be the winner? First, second, or third?
I want a dinner.
Oh, you want chicken? Okay. Last three numbers. Last three.
Oh, muchas gracias.
We have a very special presentation for you. Mr. Fonseca is going to do it.
Damas y caballeros, déjenme presentarle a ustedes una persona muy importante que nos ha apoyado. Es un council member, Néstor Valencia. Ha sido miembro del comité del DAC. Please give a warm welcome. This is Councilman Néstor Valencia is supporting us. He was also a member of the District Advisory Committee.
Buenas noches, good evening. Good to see some of you still here. Qué bueno ver estas personas aquí todavía. Con la invitación de Roberto, me encuentro aquí esta noche. With Roberto Fonseca's invitation, I find myself here after about, this is my fourth event for today. Es mi cuarto evento del día. It started at 11 o'clock in the morning. Pero I want to say just really quick, quiero decir bien rápido, lo que están haciendo ustedes se dice en inglés, es phenomenal, ¿verdad? Es estupendo, it's amazing. Los papás, ustedes ya saben, you know, I'm a parent as well, fighting the good fight, peleando esa lucha de nunca acabar. You have to continue fighting. Tienen que seguir luchando. That's not going to stop. No puede parar porque yo lo conozco ahora en otro modo. I know the fight in a different manner now, from a government perspective, de una perspectiva del gobierno. Pero también he empezado una escuela charter con unos amigos. I've also started a public charter school with some friends in the South Central area in Walnut Park. Let me say to you, I love public education. I am supportive of public education. Estoy muy orgulloso que yo fui a las escuelas públicas y que mis niños están yendo a las escuelas públicas. However, sin embargo, si ustedes no están ahí apoyando a sus hijos y hablando con el director, hablando con los maestros, nuestras escuelas no van a estar bien. If you're not there supporting your children, speaking with the principal, letting them know how things are, speaking with the teachers, our public schools do not succeed if you're not there. So we need you there. Necesitamos a ustedes. We need the DAC, we need the CIAC, we need the ELAC. Okay, we need PTA, we need teachers, and teachers are coming around. Estamos necesitando a todos esos comités que ustedes ya conocen, al sindicato de maestros. Los maestros ya están agarrando la onda. They can't do this by themselves. Right? The teachers don't do it by themselves. And principals don't work by themselves. So please, I urge you to continue your work. Les urjo que sigan con su lucha y su trabajo, con su familia, and with the kids of all schools. Thank you so much. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Yes. And now the raffle. Okay. It's going to be a free trip to Santa Monica. Dice que el que quiera le va a dar ahorita el especial 5 for $5. 5 for $5.
You want?
Oh. Take it away. Ahora sí.
Yes.
Ella quiere. $5, 5 tickets. Get the stops. Get them back. Okay, 5 more. We're gonna be here until 3 in the morning. Don't worry about it. There it comes. Stops. Break them up. $15. She wants $15 back. Take them apart. I'd like to thank you for helping the cause. Very important. You have to support each other. I feel very impressed with your effort. El esfuerzo de ustedes es muy importante. How come you get them for free? I know it's not fair. Okay, we're getting about ready to go. Okay, I'm gonna start. First, second, or third number. Which one? Raise your hand. Al primer boleto, al segundo, al tercero. Dice 3, al 3. O sea, 2 se van a emocionar, pero van a ser perdedores. Vamos a ver. Okay. A ver, niña, would you please? And the first loser. The last 3 numbers, 108. That's a loser. Second loser, 066. The winner, the first winner. Okay, the winner is, I give you all 6 numbers. 0. Everybody has 0? 2, 8, 0 again. Number 3 and number 1. That's the winner. 031. The last 3 numbers. 031. How lucky you are! You didn't buy him and he went. This 031. That's one. We got a winner. Those 3. Okay, everybody tied up your shoes and start dancing. 031. 031. That's it. That's the right one. That's the right one.
Yeah, she's the winner. She's the
031.
winner.
That's the right one. 031.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, el grupo Bocho. Yeah.